Good day, grade 8 learners. For week 8 of the fourth quarter, you will explain and interpret the probability of events, and you will find the probability of simple event. Let's have the definition of probability. The probability of an event, or we denote as P of event, is a number from 0 to 1 which tells how likely the event is to happen. To further understand the definition of probability, let's have the probability line. The probability line is between 0 to 1. Since based from the definition, the probability of an event is only from 0 to 1. If an event is never to happen, its probability is 0. Or if it's impossible to happen, its probability is 0. But if an event is sure to happen, its probability is 1. Between 0 to 1, we have 1/2. If an event has an even chance, therefore, the probability of that event is 1/2. Or in terms of decimal number, it is 0.50. And in terms of percentage, it is 50%. Between 0 to 1/2, we have 1/4. If an event has a probability between 0 to 1/2, it is unlikely to happen. Now, if an event has a probability of 1/4, we can also say that its probability is 0.25 or 25%. And lastly, between 1/2 to 1, if the probability of an event is between 1/2 to 1, it is likely to happen, or it has a greater chance to happen. For example, if an event has a probability of 3/4, we can also say that its probability is 0.75 or 75%. So take note of the probability line. There are 4 probability rules. Number 1, the probability of any event is a number, either fraction, decimal, or percent. So here's again the probability line. If we're going to observe, the probability of an event was written in 3 ways. First, it was written in fraction. Second, it was written in decimal. And third, it was written in percentage. So you can write the probability of an event in fraction, decimal, or percent. So here's an example. The probability that it will rain tomorrow is 45%. We can also say that the probability that it will rain tomorrow is 0.45, or the probability that it will rain tomorrow is 9/20. Number 2, probability rules. If an event is impossible or never to happen, then the probability is 0. So here's again the probability line, and if it is impossible to happen or never to happen, its probability is 0. So kapag ang isang bagay ay imposibleng mangyari, ang kanyang probability ay 0. Here's an example of an event that has a 0 probability. The probability that the Philippines will experience snow. Okay, why do you think that the Philippines will not experience snow? Very good, because we are near to the equator. Number 3, probability rules. If an event is sure to happen, then the probability is 1. So if we're going to look at the probability line, if it's sure to happen, then its probability is 1, or it is 100%. So here's an example of an event that has 1 probability or 100% probability. The probability that the sun will rise in the east tomorrow. Okay, so why do you think that it has a 1 or 100% probability? Very good, because the sun always rises on the east. The last probability rule, or number 4, the sum of the probabilities of all the outcomes in the sample space is 1. To understand the number 4 probability rule, we have this example. If the probability that it will rain tomorrow is 45%, then there is 55% that it will not rain. If we're going to add the probability that it will rain and the probability that it will not rain, then the sum is 100%. And if you still remember from the probability line, 100% is equal to 1 probability. Here's an example in decimal number. If the probability that it will rain tomorrow is 45%, and in terms of decimal number, it is 0.45, and the probability that it will not rain is 55%, and in terms of decimal number is 0.55, if we're going to add 0.45 to 0.55, then the sum is 1. So, the probability rule is proven. And lastly, in terms of fraction, 45% in terms of fraction is 9 over 20. And 55% in terms of fraction is 11 over 20. If we're going to add 9 over 20 and 11 over 20 is equal to 9 plus 11, we have 20. And we will just copy the common denominator, which is 20. And 20 over 20 is equal to 1. So, the sum of the probabilities of all the outcomes in the sample space is 1. To find the probability of simple event, let's have this formula. The probability of an event is equal to the number of favorable outcomes, or the number of expected event, over number of all possible outcomes, or as simple as the sample space. So take note of this formula. Let's answer first activity 2, because we will use the concept here in activity 2 to answer activity 1. With a given direction, find the probability of the following simple event. Of course, we will use the formula in finding the probability of a simple event. Now we have this table. For the first column, we have the experiment, and we have 3 experiments here: flipping a coin, tossing a die, spinning a wheel. And for the second column, we have the given events. For the third, we have the number of favorable outcomes, which we will answer, and number of all possible outcomes for the fourth column, which we will also answer. And for the fifth, sixth, and seventh column, that is the probability of an event in percent, fraction, and decimal. So let's start first with flipping a coin. Now, the event is getting a head, and what is the number of favorable outcome in getting a head? So take note that the number of favorable outcome is on the numerator of the probability of an event. Okay, so how many heads are there in a coin? Okay, there is only one head in a coin. So the number of favorable outcome is 1. Okay, so paano nakuha yung 1? Bilangin lang natin kung ilan ba ang head sa isang barya. Dahil isa lang ang head sa isang barya, ngayon ang sagot natin ay 1. Next, number of all possible outcomes. So ilan ba ang pwedeng lumabas kapag tinapon natin ang isang barya? Tama, 2. So, pwedeng ang lumabas ay head or pwedeng tail. So, the number of all possible outcomes is 2. How did we get 2? we have only two possible outcomes. That is the head or tail. Now, we can now find the probability of an event. So, we have 1 for the number of favorable outcomes, and we have 2 for number of all possible outcomes. So, the probability of an event in fraction first is 1/2. How did we get 1/2? Because the number of favorable outcomes is 1 and the number of all possible outcomes is 2. Okay, now we will convert 1/2 to percent, and that is our decimal first, and that is 0.50. And from 0.50, we will convert this to percent, and that is 50%. So, did you understand how did we get the answer for number 1? Okay, very good. Now, let's have the second experiment, that is tossing a die. So, what is the number of favorable outcomes in tossing a die and getting or tossing 2? So, how many 2 are there in a die? Okay, there is only 1 2 in a die. And for the number of all possible outcomes, ilan ang pwedeng lumabas kapag hinagis natin ang isang die? Tama, 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that is all 6 possible outcomes. Now, after finding the favorable outcomes and possible outcomes, we can now find the probability of an event. So, what is the probability that we will get or we will toss 2 if we're going to toss a die? So that is, in fraction, we have 1/6 because the number of favorable outcomes, take note of the formula, that is 1. So we will write 1 on the numerator, and number of all possible outcomes, and that is 6. So we will write 6 on the denominator. And if we're going to convert that in decimal point, that is approximately 0.17. And in percent, that is 17%. Okay, and last, we have spinning a wheel with the colors pink, blue, yellow, and violet. Now, the event is getting red. So, if you're going to spin a wheel, what is the chance or what is the probability that we will get red? But first, we will find the number of favorable outcomes. So, how many red are there in the wheel? Okay, the answer is 0 because there is no red color in the wheel. And number of favorable outcomes is 4. How did we get 4? Okay, very good. There are 4 possible outcomes, and these are pink, blue, yellow, and violet. Now, if we're going to find the probability of an event in fraction first, that is 0/4 or as simple as 0, and in decimal, 0, and of course in percent form, that is 0%. So that's how are you going to answer your activity 2. Okay, we are now ready to answer activity 1. With the given direction, write the probability that the following events could happen. You may use fraction, decimal, or percent. But this time, I will use fraction because it is easier to write the probability of an event in fraction. Why? Because the formula was in fraction form. But if you wish to write in decimal or percent, you may use it also. Okay, so let's have number 1. There are weekends in a week. Okay, so the answer is 2/7. How did we get 2/7? Of course, there are 2 weekends, and that is the number of favorable outcomes. We have 2 on the numerator because we have Saturday and Sunday as weekend. And for the number of all possible outcomes, there are 7 days in a week. So there are weekends in a week. The answer is 2/7. And for number 2, if you toss a coin, it will come out as tail. And the answer is 1/2 because there is only one tail in a coin. So we write 1 on the numerator. And there are 2 possible outcomes in tossing a coin. That is head or tail. So we write 2 on the denominator. Okay, so for number 3, out of 25 students, there are 20 students attended their online class. So the answer is 20 over 25 or 4/5. How did we get the answer? Of course, we write 20 on the denominator because there are 20 students attended their online class. And we write 25 on the denominator because there are 25 students in all on the class. So, if we're going to find the simplest form of 20 over 25, and that is 4/5. So that's how easy your activity 1. But first, answer first your activity 2 before activity 1. Finally, we are now in activity 3. So the direction is solve the following problems involving probability of events. For problem number 1, if a letter is chosen at random from the word statistics, what is the probability that the letter chosen is T? Okay, so remember first the formula in finding the probability of simple event. So take note that on the numerator, we will write the number of favorable outcomes or number of expected event, and on the denominator, we will write the number of all possible outcomes or the sample space. So here, our event is the probability of getting or choosing T from the word statistics. So take note, let's count first how many T are there in the word statistics. We have 1, 2, and 3. Therefore, the number of favorable outcomes or number of expected event is 3 because there are 3 T in the word statistics. And for the denominator, number of all possible outcomes or sample space. How many letters are there in the word statistics? Okay, we have 10 letters. Therefore, the probability of choosing T in the word statistics is 3/10. And that is the final answer. For number 2, we have in a family of 3 children, what is the probability that the youngest child is a girl? Again, we will use this formula in finding the probability of an event. So what is the chance or what is the probability that the youngest child is a girl? Let's remember that a child can be girl or boy. So we have only 2 choices. Therefore, the number of all possible outcomes is 2. And the number of favorable outcomes is 1. Therefore, the chance or the probability that the youngest child is a girl is 1/2. And it is an even chance. Okay, last, number 3. Emilio has 5 peso coin. He tosses the coin twice. What is the probability of both tail turning up? So, what is the probability that Emilio will get 2 tails in tossing the coin twice? First, let's go back to your counting technique. if we're going to toss a coin for the first try, the possible outcome can be head or tail. And if we're going to toss again the coin for the second try, the possible outcome is head or tail, and again, head or tail. So, in tossing a coin twice, these are the possible outcomes. It can be head and head or two heads. It can be head and tail or tail and head. And last, it can be both tail. So, we have 4 possible outcomes in tossing the coin twice. Therefore, we will write on the denominator as the possible outcomes, number of all possible outcomes or sample space is 4. And of course, from the given possible outcomes, how many boss tail we have here? We have only 1. So the answer is 1/4. Okay, so don't forget your counting techniques because you will use it in solving problems involving probability of events. So that's for activity 3. For the grade 8 team, we have Reina S. Corpus, Ofelia V. Mapatak, Rowena V. Palaming, Paula Bianca P. Cruz, Manny C. Ancheta, and yours truly. So grade 8 learners, you may now answer your week 8 fourth quarter activity sheets. And see you on the next virtual instruction. So goodbye!